today on the London Ear, it's episode 500, believe it or not, on the London Ear today. So somewhere along the way, I've managed to take a year of shows off in 11 years. Don't ask me how I've done that, but when you work it out, that's what I've done. And it's a fantastic opportunity here for me on RTE 2XM to chat to some fantastic people who are doing great things in Ireland and, more importantly, like myself, outside Ireland. So if you are Irish outside Ireland, get involved in the show, give me a shout and we'll catch up with you and see what you're doing in your part of the world. And this is my next guests on the show. Yes, guests. It's kind of a strange one because about a year and a half ago, somewhere along the way, my brain went, I'm going to have to move outside of London. And when I did that, I said, if I'm going to move outside of London, I really, really should go and start visiting all the football stadiums that I've been talking about and actually go to football matches, because you've been watching on the telly for long enough. So that's what I did. I started going to football matches all the time, and I went to 30 football matches last season, which I'm quite proud of now, to be quite honest with you. Along the way, I found out about Girls on the Ball and their fantastic, fantastic work. And over the past little while, I've noticed on social media that there are more and more people who claim to be influencers and content creators and social media people who are robbing content all over the place. And Girls on the Ball are doing it the proper way. They are out there, they're getting the interviews with the people, they're doing their stuff, and they're showing people how it should be done. So I'm delighted to be joined, I should say, by Rachel O'Sullivan and Sophie Downey. Hello, thank you so much, Girls on the Ball.
Thank you for having us on. Guess from the names which one of us is Irish.
The one with the Irish accent?
Love the Irish name, that's me, yeah.
So listen, thank you so much for joining me today. Now, it was a great opportunity because, as well, you're doing fantastic things within the realm of women's football here in the UK. The WSL is starting this weekend, but I'm really, really impressed with you guys and what you actually do, because you're there every weekend and you're creating, not only just creating content. I actually don't like saying creating content, because you're properly reporting on these. It's not just about going to a football match. It's about everything that surrounds that. How did you get into this, first of all? Because it's a lot of work.
Yes, we started way back in 2012, went to the Olympics. I got some tickets to see Team GB against Brazil. There were 70,000 people at Wembley. And we thought, like, both of us having grown up loving football, this is the coolest thing. We wanted to know more about women's football. And there just wasn't really that much out there to tell us anything about it, where the games are played, where these players play. And we decided maybe we'd try and start something. And we thought, what about a women's sports website? And we would start with football as a jumping off point, because that was our favourite sport. And sure, football was absolutely plenty to be getting on with. I can't believe we ever thought of doing a full women's sports website. But yeah, we ended up going to games, covering games in whatever way we could, whether that was live Twitter feeds. And I took along a camera and kind of taught myself how to shoot. And we wrote blogs and we did interviews, and we kind of just grew from there. We did it alongside our jobs. We were both in digital marketing for almost 10 years. And then the 2021-22 season, was it, where we jumped off and went full time?
Yeah, I think it was, I mean, this was back in the day before there was, we maybe had one broadcast game a month for the league. If we were lucky. Definitely the highlight of the season on TV was the FA Cup final. That was the one, I guess, we'd all grown up with being able to watch if you weren't going to a stadium. But other than that, the coverage was pretty low. It's not like what it is now. So I think we started from that point and have had to adapt, pretty quickly to, the growth of the game, but also the fact that it is much more accessible, I guess, everywhere in terms of getting eyes on it. And how does that look for us now as a smaller independent organization, and how can we shift around in that space, I guess?
But you're saying that you're a smaller entity in that world, but you're really, really well respected. And when you see the collaborations that you've been involved with over the past few years, that's testament to the standard of what you're doing, of the work that you're doing. I mean, you've worked with like Cadbury's here, you've worked with Nike. I have a whole list of things here. Rachel, your photography has been used on the covers of books. It's been used in Beth Mead's book. Sophie, you write for The Guardian. It's like, how did you... It seems from what you said, Rachel, that it was a natural thing that you went towards the photography. But Sophie, have you always been into the writing, or how did you gravitate towards that?
Yeah, so weirdly enough, at school, when I was at school, I was like the sports editor for the school newspaper. I'm not entirely sure how that happened. So I've loved football forever, and I was just in an all-girls school, and I was pretty much the only girl who loved football like that. I think, everything I did was about football outside of school. I studied the game. I loved to go and watch it. I went to watch games on my own when I was in my teenagers. When I was a teenager, everything. I was just football obsessed, but I think at that time there wasn't really any options for me. I'm in my late 30s. Back then there wasn't really anything as a career path that you could really look towards to be involved in the sport. So I was the editor for the school newspaper. I think my first interview was actually in rugby. I went to London Wasps, and I was quite a small 14-year-old, and I interviewed this giant of a rugby player, Joe Calzaghe. Joe Calzaghe, I think it was Joe.
Oh yeah, I remember him.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he was I just remember walking into the London Wasps Stadium and him being an absolute giant above me. But he was very good, and I thought I got a taste for that. And I've always loved writing, but I just didn't really know how to channel that in terms of like my love of football and stuff. So I kind of kept that maybe on the back burner a bit. And I think that's what Girls on the Ball has given me the opportunity to do, is explore what I like to write about. I love the feature stuff, and I love talking about football and the analysis stuff. And luckily The Guardian, have come along and said, will you write for us on a freelance basis? But it's all sort of just happened, I guess.
You say that. I mean, it was 9 long years of graft alongside our jobs, and finding our feet. And I think, Girls on the Ball actually got me my first digital internship. So it actually worked the other way around. You think maybe the work came first, but actually Girls on the Ball came first. And then I ended up in a paid digital internship role. And then from there, I stayed within digital marketing and digital communications. And I always had an eye on how can I expand my skill set from my role, but also how could that benefit Girls on the Ball alongside it. So it's always been about us trying to self-teach and expand. And, within your roles, you ended up writing more as well. Like photography never really came into any of my roles. I maybe did a little bit of it in a couple of my jobs, but that was very much like a self-taught thing and something I really, really enjoyed doing and got braver and braver about doing. I used to never go near the pitch. And now like to think that I've shot in World Cups and World Cup finals and Euros finals and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. But it was a passion. And I guess that's why we were so willing to like push ourselves out of our comfort zones and try and learn new things and try and do things more professionally and that kind of thing.
So the women's game has changed massively in 12 years. What have you found about what you're doing now has changed, and the way that people are consuming women's sports and women's football content? I hate that word again, content.
I think it's it's an unrecognizable game in some respects to when we started, 12, 13 years ago. I think the prevalence of social media and content is still very, very high. I think it gives it a space when even still there isn't that much space in national media. Yes, it's more prevalent than it was, but you're still limited to less pages in the newspaper than say the men's side of the game or other sports. So I think there is still is using that space on the social media networks to connect with fans, to open up the visibility, to open up eyes. And I guess that's where maybe why we've been pretty successful as well, is because we operate within that space. I think there is a change. I think for me, it's always about the football first. It always has been for us. I think it's about what happens on the pitch and the players, and wanting to tell the stories of those individuals who are involved. And even more now, I think it's even though it's grown massively, the stories are still being told of the same kind of crop of players. So I guess over here it's the Lionesses. They're the ones that get the headlines a lot. I love telling the stories of people maybe a bit lesser known, or who deserve maybe a bit more underrated, or who are at the Arsenals and Chelseas of the world, but are playing really well in the league. And I don't know, someone like a Courtney Brosnan, right? Ridiculous goalkeeper playing at Everton, probably doesn't get her, how the kids say, her flowers enough. So like being able to sit down and talk to her, or even at Everton, Yaya, Aurora Ghali, those kind of players that don't always get the spotlight maybe.
Yeah, I think as well, like we have grown at an exponential rate, and sometimes maybe think we've made it, or we've gotten to a point where we don't, need to look so much for coverage, because there is coverage there, but it's still disproportionately represented. I think we drove through that explanation of why we deserve to be here kind of era very quickly. I think we plowed through that quite quickly, and in the beginning it was a lot of having to prove why women's football should be here and be watched and be supported, and it was always a bit chicken and egg in that respect, because people thought, well, it's not good enough, so why should we watch it and support it? And it's like, well, it's not going to get better if you don't watch it and support it. So it's people still don't know that the game was banned for 50 years in the England, stuff like that. You think you've made it. Maybe that's because we're within a circle of women's football lovers and everyone knows those stories, but actually more broadly, there's still so much more to tell. So yeah, like you said, it's grown exponentially, but when you kind of, from a macro, if you move back a bit, you realize there's still a long, long way for it to go.
Thank you both for joining me today on the show. It's great to chat to you and find out more about what you get up to and about life. It must be tough going though, because if you're a couple and you're working together as well, you're always around each other. Is that why one of you goes off and does a separate podcast?
No, I think, that's a question we get a lot. I think we're very lucky that we are each other's best friends as well. And I think when we talk about girls in the ball, means we work 7 days a week, we don't have a lot of time off, we don't have a lot of social hours. I think that wouldn't work if you were with someone who wasn't equally passionate about what you're working in. So I think the fact that we both have the same passion means that we don't have a social life, but that's fine because we're together 90% of the time. So it works pretty well, doesn't it?
Yeah, not really.
God, don't sound too confident there, Jeannie.
No. I mean, people keep asking me this question about working with my wife, and I'm like, I've never really thought, like, it's just been quite natural. I think it's we both had a career separate from each other for a decade. So like, you had your work, I had my work, and we'd do Girls in the Ball in the evening or at the weekends, both. But yeah, I think it's just been a real natural progression. And the years of the pandemic as well, we were living at home together, working at home, even though we were in different jobs, we were working at home together. It got us very used to, being around each other 24/7 if we weren't already. And I think it's just been that kind of natural progression now. And like, it's not like we're sitting in the house all day. We're always out and about. We're traveling places.
We have different skills as well. Like what we bring to the game is different. So we don't always experience a game the same way. So if you'll be in the press box, I'll be pitch side, and we experience things in different ways. And maybe in the World Cup, you'd have to go off and do post-match and press conferences, and I'd have to get back to wherever we were staying and do a podcast. And so there are different ways we experience things. And even during the Euros, we have these magical moments, and I'm sure a lot of Irish people will be disgusted to hear that I was delighted that the Lionesses won the Euros, because it is the industry I've been working in for the last 11, 12 years now, and you've seen these players grow, and you get to know them from underage, under 16s, and see them growing into the senior squad. And I see in Ireland at a World Cup, like there were these magic moments that happened that like we'd have to kind of go and meet in the car park in the middle of after post match, before she does the press conference, before I do a podcast, and have a bit of a celebration together, like because we didn't actually get to experience those big moments together. Like when Ireland qualified, I was in Scotland, you were at another game, so yes, we're in each other's pockets, but like there's still moments where we have these big experiences and you want to be doing them together still, even though we're always together.
That's really nice too, because like think of it in 10 years times, when you're thinking of these, when you remember all these, there's like a complete story there to be told. Rather, you're going to have to write a book now about that, all those things, aren't you?
We have ideas already for that. Around the world in 80 games is the plan.
Brilliant.
We're going to have to narrow down the 1,100 games we've done to 80.
Like, of all the games, is there one that just completely stands out for you? I reckon I know what it's going to be, but I mean, is there one that was like, I'm so glad we were there?
Well, like the Ireland game for me, the Scotland game, because it was such a hard slog for Ireland to get through to qualify. There were so many steps they had to take. They'd been close before and missed out. Scotland weren't an easy team to play. They were away. Like, there was just a lot of different things. You weren't there with me. I was doing it on my own. And it was one of those games where you really, really, really wanted to happen. And then when the goal goes in, you don't know if it's still going to happen. And to actually get to be there and witness the kind of joy from them winning, but also those of us on the sideline that, there's some people that work in the Irish game that I've gotten to know really well as well. And it meant just as much to us on the sideline. And we're trying to do a job, but equally like we're cheering that they've scored. And then we're like, oh God, I've actually got to try and get this photo of her celebrating that they've scored. So I think that one will stick in my memory because it meant, when we went to the World Cup, I got to go and cover Ireland at the World Cup. Oh, Ireland, Australia, like that was unreal. Watching them come out, listening to the Irish fans, like I get tingles still thinking of that. So I've seen England play so often and saw England win a Euros. To actually get Ireland into a major tournament was unbelievable.
Yeah, I think you can guess which mine is. Wembley, July 2022. That was pretty special. The final, when lifting that trophy. I've been in that stadium so many times, and it was just one of those days that really, I don't know, full circle moment maybe. It had been 10 years to the day that we'd walked down Wembley Way for the Team GB Brazil game for the Olympics in 2012. And 10 years later, we walked down Wembley Way, but then we walked out of it with a trophy. And it was a really special day. And I do remember, there were a handful of us in the press box that day who had been there, for the last 10 years, maybe 2 or 3 of us. And I just remember the tears and the joy, and that was pretty special. I think also one that I really am glad I was there for as well was actually 2015 World Cup in Canada. It was England, Canada in Vancouver, playing the host, quarterfinals.
That was a great game.
And I can still hear that noise, reverberating around the stadium. England beat them. It was on the way to the bronze medal in 2015. It was a very, very special occasion, and I think that whole trip was pretty magic because we'd spent a month in Canada. We'd gone from east coast to west coast, and to get those kind of experiences with you, but also with our friends who came along with us, was really meant a lot.
Yeah. And was that the first time that you guys kind of took the big jump with Girls on the Ball? That's like, if you're going for a month away doing something, that's a big commitment for work and everything. Like,
our first major tournament was 2013, and we'd taken 3 weeks off. I think for me, I got 2.5 weeks in Canada, and I came back after the quarterfinals. So I missed the semi-final and, was fully ready to come back out if they made the final. But Sophie managed to get the extended time off. I
had the 2.5 weeks, and I rang my boss the Monday after the quarterfinal, and she was like, "You're asking me for more time off, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yes, please. Can I stay here?" And she was like, "You're not going to talk to me if I make you come home." So she thankfully was a very nice lady and gave me the time off and allowed me that extra week, because I think she knew I would be insufferable if she'd made me come home to watch the semi-final from my couch.
What's next for you? Because it's what is next? Like, it's a season. Like last weekend, you were at the Bristol Birmingham game in the championship. Now, I loved the championship. Last year, it was just brilliant, and I I got to know lots of the players and how they work and who's, get more into the tactics and all that kind of stuff. And I really, really enjoyed the championship. Now, it starts a little bit earlier than the WSL. But how, that's a long slog from September until the middle of May or whatever it is, every weekend. And not only that, you seem to have a podcast or a video or something coming out almost every day of the week. You're always at it.
It's busy.
Well, we have to justify it being our full-time jobs now. We've got to, we've no excuse. I think we do look back and wonder how we used to do it alongside our day jobs. In the immediate, what's next? This next season, it starts the weekend, and once the ball is rolling, it doesn't really stop. We're still in a situation where we just kind of try and say yes to everything. It expands our skills, it gives us new experiences, and it pays the bills. We're not really in a position where you can just kind of say we're just going to do this or just going to do that yet. Gearing up towards another Euros, like this summer was the first summer where we didn't have a major tournament. With Team GB not qualifying for the Olympics, there isn't really work tournament wise. So it was actually the first summer since going full time for us not having a major tournament. And what did we do? We went to America to watch football. But I think, we're gearing up towards the Euros. The summer we'll have 2026 off, which we've been thinking about for a number of years, thinking about where we're going to go. And then it's the 2027 World Cup in Brazil. And I think we'll probably, maybe after that World Cup, we'll have I'd like to think not after the World Cup, but before that, we'll think about what's next for us and for Girls in the Ball after that World Cup, because not that it's not sustainable, but you change and adapt every year as the game grows. And, I think what we do isn't sustainable at the moment in terms of things will change and we'll have to change. So, we're constantly trying to think, where's the next place we go?
What's next? And I guess we do something like 115 live games a year. That's a lot, when you add into we love it. But especially when you add in the travel and everything else, it does get a lot. And I think at the end of last season, we were quite ready for at least 2 weeks. We were ready for
that World Cup was a killer.
Yeah, the World Cup was a killer. And that's not to say it was the best experience, I think, certainly of my life. And I would say your life, being away, working a major tournament. We're so lucky to be able to do that. But I think it's remembering that there does have to be some space as well. And you can't run on fumes forever, I think is the thing. So it's just about how we work that out into future plans and what that looks like as a business going forward.
We're always told, and we know we're very lucky to be working in a job we love, to have been able to turn our passion into our jobs. Doesn't mean it's not hard work. It's really bloody hard work. One of my friends said it to me, you leave your 9 to 5 to work 24/7. And it's so true. But then I also think I wouldn't work this hard for anything else. So, it all balances out in the end. And then, you ask about us working together. The bonus is we're not away from each other for days and weeks on end. She might leave me every now and then for an under 17s tournament or an under 19s tournament or something. And I stay here and hold the fort and get some of the work in. But I think we're very, very lucky to be doing what we're doing. And I think we'll keep doing it as long as we can. I think that's where the plan.
It just might change.
It just adapts, yeah.
Listen, it's been absolutely fantastic chatting to you and getting to know you both. If people want to find out more about what you do, follow you online, where is the best place for them to go?
We're on all the social media platforms. I sounded so old calling it the social media, but
the social media.
At Girls in the Ball on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. We're on Threads, but we don't really use it, and YouTube, of course, as well.
And you do a live on Instagram now and again as well. I've been bothering you on that.
We try and do a weekly live every Saturday. In season, yeah. So we'll start that back up again.
Awesome. Listen, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been absolutely fantastic finding out about your world, because I'm in awe of all the work you do week in, week out. You're always on the socials. You're always telling us what's going on in the world. And why I really, really wanted, as I said at the start of our chat, what I really wanted to show people is that if you're going to share stuff, share it, get in, get the interviews, do it properly. Don't be robbing people's photos and stories. And it's so annoying. And it's just all over the place on the TikTok world of women's soccer right now, and it's not the way to do it. So you guys should be an inspiration and like on a pedestal, because that's the way you should be doing it. You should be out there writing your stuff, writing the blogs, doing all that kind of thing, and fair play to you. I hope long may it continue.
Thank you very much. We've really enjoyed being on and taking a trip down memory lane.